In today's video, I'm going to share with you 11 of my top new home construction tips so that you can be prepared and know what to expect when building a new home in 2024. Hi and welcome to the channel. My name is John Ferrin. I've been a realtor in the Phoenix Southeast Valley for well over a decade now, and we absolutely love helping people just like you relocate to Queen Creek and the surrounding area. So let's get into this. Tip number one, if you haven't already done so, you absolutely must get pre-qualified or pre-approved for a mortgage loan. Starting to talk with lenders now will actually give you time to choose which lender you want to work with. You can shop rates and products, and you'll get the best overall loan for your situation. And by being pre-qualified, you'll know what you can afford, and you'll know which price range you should be shopping in, because there's not a whole lot of things worse than falling in love with a home only to find out later that you didn't qualify for it and now you can't afford it. Now we'll talk more about lenders coming up here in a couple minutes in one of the other tips. Now tip number two, this one's one that a lot of people aren't even aware of. In fact, I hadn't heard of this until just recently. So I'm told one telltale sign of a builder who's willing to cut corners is the placement of the AC vents. Now you'll always find them up in the ceilings here in Arizona, but for maximum efficiency, they really should be placed as close to the windows as possible with the vents facing the window or the wall. What this does is it allows the air to actually come out, kind of bounce off the window or the wall and kind of cycle back around. Now just because your builder didn't put the vent right up against the wall doesn't mean that they're a bad builder at all, but the reason that it is kind of a sign of somebody who might be willing to cut corners is if that vent is placed someplace further from the wall, then the builder's actually saving on that length of air conditioning duct for that particular home, and there's a cost savings in there for the builder. Now of course one house isn't going to make any difference at all, but if you're doing hundreds of homes a year, that savings could really add up. Now again, this isn't solid cold hard facts, it's really more anecdotal evidence that I ran across recently. So if your vents aren't right by the window, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a bad builder. For example, my AC vent is about as far away from the window as it can be, and yet I believe my home builder is a top tier quality builder here in Arizona. So is it wrong for them to place it more in the middle of the room as opposed to up against the wall? No, it's not wrong. Is it the most efficient way if it's not placed up closer to the wall? Well, maybe, but this much you can rely on. Wherever that vent gets placed, it's going to be in accordance with the current building standards and practices. But you know what? Just for fun, next time you're in a home, take a look around. See where those AC vents are. Just something to think about. All right, let's move on to tip number three, and that is understanding the difference between a base price and your final purchase price. For example, this is the smallest home offered in a particular community here in the area, and it has a base price of $448,990. Now most floor plans are going to be flexible and have options where you can add a room or make a den or maybe do a bump out someplace, and these are called your structural options or upgrades, and you'll actually need to decide on the configuration of your home at the time you sign your contract. And of course, every one of these structural upgrades is going to have a cost associated with it. So you've got the base price of the home, and now you have to add in the cost of your structural upgrades. But you're not done yet, because now you got to find a lot to put that home on, and most lots are going to have a lot premium attached to it. And this is added pricing for lots that are larger or more desirable, or maybe they're closer to the amenities than just your standard run-of-the-mill lot. Now lot premiums vary greatly. They can range from $1,000 to over $100,000 or more, depending on the particular community. But for this example, let's just say that you picked a lot that has a $9,000 premium. So at the time of your contract, you've got the base price of the home, you've got your structural upgrade pricing, and now you've added another $9,000 to that total in the form of your lot premium. But yet, you're still not done. There's more, because now you get to go to the design center. So at the design center, this is where you're going to pick out all of your interior upgrades. The two things most buyers upgrade right off the bat is the flooring and the kitchen. Now, there's a lot of other upgrades that you can select as well, but many of those things you can actually do later on your own after you've closed on the home. So now you take what you spend at the design center, you add it to that prior subtotal that we had, and when you put all of it together, now you have the full purchase price of your home. And it's going to be different by a lot from the base price of that home. Now, with all that being said, here's something to think about. You may want to take your money and maybe focus it more on the structural upgrades and maybe not so much on the design center upgrades. And I say that because you can always come back later and change out the faucets or put in a backsplash or change the cabinetry or whatever. But it's really expensive, really difficult, maybe even impossible to come back and add a bedroom to the home or add a full bathroom or bump out the patio or something like that. So the structural upgrades, you may want to concentrate more on those if those are what's important to you. All right, let's move on to tip number 4. You need to know that once you sign that contract, you're locked into it. So the builders all use these boilerplate type of contracts. They're pretty similar across the board, but what you may not be aware of is that these contracts are all written heavily slanted towards protecting the builder. There are very few safeguards or protections written into the contract that actually protect you, the buyer. Now, builders don't use the standard Arizona residential resale purchase contracts, which actually have protections built in for both the buyer and the seller. Builder contracts are loaded with legal jargon, and they can be in excess of 100 pages or more, with all sorts of little things in there that you would never even expect. Simply put, when you sign a builder's contract, you are giving up a lot of your rights and protections. For example, let's say you put $20,000 down as an earnest deposit on a home, and for some reason, whatever that is, you are not able to close on the home. Maybe you had a job transfer, maybe you changed your mind, maybe you had a life change, I don't know. But whatever reason you can't close on the home, in almost every instance, you're not going to get that earnest deposit money back. Nope, the builder, they're going to keep it. Now, sticking with the contract for just a little bit longer, like I said, they're long and they're packed full with legal jargon. So as you read through it, and you should read through it before you sign it, but as you read through it, if you're uncomfortable, then I recommend you contact a real estate attorney and have them go over the contract with you so that you understand exactly what it is that you're signing. Now, is the builder going to change the contract or amend it based upon your attorney's review? No, they're not. The contract is what the contract is, but at least if you have an attorney review it with you, if you're uncomfortable, then you'll have a better understanding of what it is that you're signing. Now, as I think about it, I don't know if I've ever had a client take the contract to an attorney for review. And I think what it boils down to is, if you want the house, you're going to have to sign the builder's contract. That's just all there is to it. So keep that in mind. All right. Now, before we move on, if you're finding value in this video, give me a like or a thumbs up. Maybe consider subscribing to the channel and click on that little bell. That way you'll be notified every time a new video gets uploaded. All right, let's move on to tip number 5, and that is understanding that you have the option between using the builder's lender or your own private lender. Now, the builders, they're always offering some sort of incentive to the buyers. We've seen closing cost assistance. We've seen credits at the design center. The most popular one that we're seeing right now is interest rate buy-downs. Now, there is a caveat to these incentives, though, and that is if you're going to get the incentives, you have to use the builder's preferred lender. Now, in most cases, the builder actually owns the preferred lender. The mortgage company is actually a subsidiary of that particular builder. Now, you're under no obligation to actually use the builder's lender to purchase your home. You can use whatever lender you choose. But again, if you want to take advantage of those incentives, then you're going to have to use the builder's lender. Now, there's a few reasons for this. One, obviously, they're going to make more money. They own the mortgage company. But there's also a more practical aspect to this as well, and that is The builder's preferred lender is very familiar with the processes that the builder uses and the chances of that lender actually getting the loan through underwriting and approved and the deal closing are much higher when they're all working on the same page with each other than if you come in with your own private outside lender. Your lender might be really good, but they also might not have any experience with new build construction. So there's a lot of roadblocks, there's a lot of things that can come up during the process that an outside lender might not be familiar with. All right, moving on to tip number 6, get it in writing. Now, if your sales associate has promised you something that's outside what's already in that contract and in the list of included items, make sure you get it in writing. Now, they could have had the very best of intentions, but if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. And honestly, it's as simple as that. So if they make a promise, get it in writing. So remember, we're talking about being prepared and knowing what to expect during the build process, right? So tip number 7, this is one that's really important, and that is be prepared for delays. You know, over the last few years, ever since COVID, we have seen supply chain shortages, we've seen material shortages, we've seen the labor pool dry up, and things got really ugly for quite a while. Well, thankfully, do I dare say, we're back to normal. Maybe not quite back to normal, but things are way better than they had been. However, we're still going to be seeing some delays. There's always a weather delay. There could be a material delay. There could be things on back order. Maybe the windows haven't come in for your home yet, so it's going to delay things just a little bit. If you're prepared and you anticipate there being delays, then when they actually happen, it just makes it a little bit easier to put up with. And kind of going along with that is tip number 8, and that is that the building process is not a perfect process, and mistakes, they're going to happen. So I think it's really important to understand that there is no such thing as a perfect home. I know when you spend a bunch of money on a home, you're expecting it to be perfect, but I'm sorry, there just is no such thing. The closest that you might be able to come to a perfect home is if you were to sit down and design every aspect of it yourself, putting in all your wants, all your desires, and you built it yourself. But you know what? There's still going to be mistakes that were made, and there's still going to be things that you wish you had done differently. Now, maybe I've been accused in the past for defending the builders over some sort of sloppy workmanship, but the actual reality is this. The builders are working with imperfect, natural products, and human beings are the ones building the homes, and as humans, well, we are pretty much imperfect. Think about it like this. Let's say you go out to dinner at a really fancy restaurant and you order some really nice, expensive meal off the menu. So you anticipate waiting for a period of time. During that time, maybe you're going to have drinks or talk or whatever, and then you expect that a very nice finished product, in this case a meal, is going to be delivered to you. And nearly every time, that's exactly what happens. But what you didn't see is what took place back in the kitchen while the meal was being prepared. Had you gone back into the kitchen during that time, you would have seen the sausage being made, so to speak. You would have seen things being spilled, dropped, thrown away, remade, taste tested, and perhaps it all would have looked like chaos to you. But at the appointed time, a beautifully plated and cooked to perfection meal would be delivered to your table. And so it goes with building a home. Now, mistakes are going to be made throughout that build process, but they generally tend to work themselves out. There's a series of inspections and walkthroughs that take place throughout the process that should catch these types of issues. So just like the meal at the restaurant, you got to sit back, relax, and trust the process. Now, I believe it was President Ronald Reagan that said, trust but verify. Well, that's what we're going to do with tip number 9. We're going to trust the process, but we're going to verify it by always getting a home inspection. Now, there's 2 points throughout the build process that I strongly encourage my clients to hire a home inspector for. The first is just prior to the pre-drywall walkthrough. This is a walkthrough that happens just before the drywall goes up so that you can see everything that's going on behind the wall. It's all still exposed. So if you do this a couple of days before that scheduled walkthrough, you can take the findings of that inspection and give it to the construction manager, and he'll be able to take care of all of those things that came up prior to the drywall going up and the process moving forward. The second time you should have a home inspection is just before you close on your finished home. And this would be like a regular home inspection. So about a week before you actually get your keys, you're going to have your final walkthrough. And the builder's going to have his own punch list. That's a list of items that still need to be completed or repairs that need to be made. He's going to have his own punch list. But if you have an inspection done a couple days prior to that walk, you can then give the inspection report to the construction manager, and all the things that the inspector found during his inspection will get added to that punch list. Then the builder has the week between the walkthrough and the time you get your keys to actually complete all of the items on that punch list. Now, you may get some pushback from some of the builders because they don't like having inspectors come onto the job site, but in my experience, most of the builders here, if the inspector meets certain criteria regarding their licensing and their insurance, the builders are usually pretty receptive to having an inspector come do a home inspection and incorporating the findings into their punch list. And speaking of final walkthroughs and punch lists, that brings me to tip number 10. Don't accept a home if there's too many items left on that punch list or there are significant items on the punch list. Now, just a moment ago, I told you that the builder typically has a week from the walkthrough until you're getting your keys to get all the things done on the punch list, and most of the time they do. But there will be instances where they just couldn't get something completed. Maybe the hardware for the cabinetry hasn't come in yet, or it's on back order, or maybe a bathroom mirror hasn't been delivered yet. These type of things, they're not going to hold up your closing. You'll be able to close on time and move into your home, but the builder's going to create another list. It's kind of an IOU kind of list where they're going to outline the things that still yet need to be done. Now, that's not really uncommon at all, but if that punch list is excessively long or there are significant things on there, then you may want to consider not signing off on it and not closing until that punch list gets completed. Now, in all honesty, if that punch list is really long or there are significant things on it, most of the time the builder themselves are going to delay the closing so that they have ample time to get things taken care of. Because honestly, they don't want to deliver an unfinished home or a low quality product to you. They all want to deliver you a good product. But all right, that brings us to the very last tip, and I don't know, this one might be the most important of all. That is tip number 11. Don't go it alone. Make sure you hire a realtor. Now, I know that could come across as maybe self-serving, but give me a second and hear me out. You know, a lot of people, they're not even aware that they can or should use a realtor when purchasing a new construction home, and they think that because they're under the assumption that that new home sales rep is representing them in the purchase of the home. Well, that's not how it works. That sales rep is an employee of the builder, and that's who they represent. Now, I work with a lot of builder sales reps, and they're all great people, but he or she answers to the builder first and foremost. Now, they're going to facilitate the process, and they'll get the paperwork done, and they do have a duty to treat you fairly and to be honest with you, but it's really unlikely that they're going to be your true advocate because, again, they're employed by the builder. Now, your own real estate agent working for you, on the other hand, has a fiduciary responsibility to act in your best interest and to put your best interest ahead of everyone else's, including their own. You know, one of the biggest myths that I hear out there is that if you go to a new home construction sales office and you don't have an agent working for you, that you'll get a better price because they don't have to pay that buyer's agent commission. Well, guess what? That's wrong. You see, long before the builder ever broke ground on that construction project, they had already built the cost of paying a buyer's agent commission into their projected costs and expected profits, and builders simply don't negotiate on price. And so when you don't use an agent to purchase that new home, the base price stays the same, but the money that would have gone to the agent for compensation actually just goes right back into the builder's pockets. And since it's the builder who pays the buyer's agent's fees, there's no out-of-pocket expense to you as the buyer. The only expense you might incur is, well, maybe buying your agent a big gulp. But hold on, don't hire just any old realtor. You need somebody who has experience working with new build construction. You know, that big name mega agent in your town who does a ton of resale business? Well, they're obviously very good at what they do. But if they're unfamiliar with new construction, that can be very ineffective, and it really can be of little to no help to you during the process. So who you work with really does matter. So if you're considering making a move to the Phoenix area, or more specifically the Southeast Valley, give us a call. We would absolutely love to help you. We can help you get into a new build home. We can help you get into a resale home. We do it all. I'll put our contact information at the end of this video. But to make it even easier, there's a link in the description to this video. Just click on that link and you can schedule your own private Zoom call with me. Now, if you want to know more about Queen Creek in general, be sure to check out that video right there. And if you want more information on building a new home, then this one right here is the one you really want to watch.